Signs of the Southland, Sunday, November 27th. It is the weekend after Thanksgiving. So let's start at the top with the football program. Mr. Purdy, do you want to review what happened in Athens this weekend?
Well, believe it or not, we scored first. We scored a touchdown first. We were the first team to score a touchdown against Georgia in the first quarter in a long time. It was more than 10 games. I forgot the exact number of games, but it was a significant number of games. So broke that. It was a nice 11-play drive, and we were up 7-0. And it was the first time we put up points against Georgia in over 1,000 days, which I credit to them deciding to not play us in 2020, so that's their fault. It's not our fault. And then held them defensively. The secondary played really well in the first half, like legitimately held them down, and they weren't getting big plays off. I think Georgia came out a little sluggish, honestly. And then we held them to some field goals. Eventually they got their game together, and they became the Georgia that they were and did the business that we thought they were going to do. We did cover, though. We got 2 touchdowns. We got the 37-14 loss, I believe, was the final score. So, all in all, I in terms of was this a bad day, I think the answer is no. Like, all things considered, in terms of we're on the interim coach, we're on the third-string quarterback, guys were going down in the first quarter. Like, I will take this as progress from last year when when it matched perfectly to no hope and there was no hope on the football field on Saturday. We had a smattering of hope because things have been kind of going our way a little bit after beating North Carolina. And I think the proper amount of good things happened on the field, considering we were playing one of the best teams to probably ever be put together in college football.
One note before you go, Jake. Under no circumstances, to borrow a drill tweet, you, under no circumstances, do not have to hand it to that team. I'm just saying, you don't. They're born with a silver spoon, born on third base, thinks they hit a triple, use whatever metaphor you want. Under no circumstances do you have to hand them any sort of compliment. But I respect your opinion. Mr. Grant, please free me from my dissension prison.
Yeah. This is going to be a theme of this episode because spoiler alert, we recorded the rest of this waiting to see if any football news would break during the process because this is a long process for us. We'll get there. I watched the first half of this on a train, which Jack and Akshay have heard me say 3 times now. So enjoy. Anyways, watched the first half of this on the train, got excited, sat down where I was going, actually met up with Drew Gordon, who's from Rumble Seat Guy too. But we watched the second half of this, and I will say the first half was more fun. And I think that UGA did a fine job making adjustments and also capitalizing on a couple catastrophic plays. I think whether it's the punt or a couple other opportunities that UGA got very, very, very close to the end zone definitely flavored this game slightly different than it probably would have been otherwise. I think that's a little bit heartening, a little bit frustrating. But at the end of the day, it's not like this came down to a 1-score game. So I think that's something that you kind of just go, hey, I hate admitting that they're a great team, but they're a great team. They capitalized on some pretty clutch errors, but this is a Tech team that actually stopped them a couple times this year and looked mildly competent doing that despite all the injuries, particularly at the quarterback position. I think commendable Zach Gibson and Tyshawn Pumachan's performances these last 2 weeks. Would have been nice to see something else in the Virginia game. Could have been a bowl season for Tech, but ifs and nuts, right? You can't go back and rewrite something that happened a month ago.
Again, I will like to refer both of you to my previous comment that you have to hand the team born with a silver spoon in their mouth literally nothing. However, let's talk a little bit. You brought up a good point about sort of wrapping up their season and sort of what this effort means, right? What this result means. And it does actually mean a lot as we look forward to the offseason, as you look forward to changes in the staff. So, Mr. Grant, set the table for me. What was the fallout from this game on the coach search side?
For those who listened last week, it seemed like a very emotional upswell in terms of the pro hiring Brent Key movement, if you will. I don't think that subsided. If anything,
not slowed down.
If Jack, social media guru that he has been the past few weeks, decided to pay attention to the likes that were coming in on Twitter for Joey's battling Chadwell and Key, why they should be hired pieces. I got several texts, by the way, that it was like, this person seems confused. And I'm like, no, that's the point. There's two options. Yeah, a lot of Twitter and Facebook momentum, at least in terms of interaction with the pieces for Brent Key. Based on what is known, it doesn't sound like those are the two leading options right now. Again, all this is grapevine-y type stuff. That's about what I got. It's been a really tight-lipped search. Obviously, anyone who's plugged in at all to Twitter has seen from a variety of sources that Willie Fritz seems to be a front runner. But again, we started recording the podcast about an hour and a half ago to do the rest of it. And in then I have just become more uncertain about the current progression of the post-game updates rather than more certain. So this could go out tomorrow, Monday morning, and they could be announcing that Robo Heisman is taking over. It's anyone's guess, it seems still.
Yeah, I think it's important to do the splits under the PAPN coach season bit where we note the time and date. This is Sunday, November 27th at just about 9:30 p.m. 9:26 to be specific, in case something breaks in the next 4 minutes before we get to a milestone. Right now, here's the situation as we see it, based on reporting from the AJC and the Athletic, and I also believe Football Scoop. Bill O'Brien, Jamie Chadwell, and Brent Key were all names that were floated for this job and were in the mix. Willie Fritz, based on reporting from the AJC, from our friend Ken Segura, is the leader in the clubhouse. There was a earlier report that had to be pulled back, that Fritz was offered the job and accepted it, but it has now been downgraded to it's not a done deal, but all signs point to. Just to talk about Willie Fritz, since I don't think there was a coach profile on him from our friends Kiefer and Robert. He is similar to Jamie Chadwell in terms of offensive profile and the concept of being a program builder. He was FCS runner-up twice with Sam Houston State, won a Sun Belt title with Georgia Southern, and basically picked them back up after, I believe, the ill-fated Brian Van Gorder era. This is quoting Robert's piece from earlier today. In our database of FBS coaches spanning 2000 to 2021, we evaluate every coach by looking at a team's average expected points per play in the years before the coach arrived and then during the tenure. Out of 370 head coaching tenures, Willie Fritz's Georgia Southern stop ranks 11th, and his Tulane tenure ranked 57th before this season metrics were included. He executed a masterful turnaround of Tulane's program and then an incredible one-season turnaround from 2021 to 2022, end quote. So
I wonder what changed there.
That is the smoking gun, for lack of a better term. 2021's offensive coordinator at Tulane, a friend we know very well in Chip Long, and he was replaced with longtime Central Missouri head coach Jim Svoda. And now Tulane has a very functional offense. The story there, kind of writes itself for the most part, but that's what you're getting in Willie Fritz. You're getting a program builder. You're getting a guy that's proven at that program building aspect, both at Georgia Southern, at Sam Houston State, at Tulane. And he runs an offense that many of us would consider a spiritual cousin, like a couple of times removed of Paul Johnson's flexbone option, wouldn't you say? So very familiar setup for the most part. Mr. Grant, I'll go to you first. When we were talking about this news earlier today, as things have broken, as things have gotten fluid, what was your first take on this prospective hire?
If it's Fritz, I like his past work. Tulane's a really tough place to make a winner. That being said, it does concern me that he's been around the block, right? I don't want to hand out a 7-year contract to somebody who may not want to be here for 7 years. Granted, I don't know what that looks like for him, but in terms of just the success he's had being a high floor guy, last year's 2-10 season notwithstanding, due to hurricanes, chip long, and close game, bad luck type stuff. You don't 2-10 to 10-2 is quite a whiplash. But in terms of the Fritz resume, yeah, he's got no Power 5 experience, but I don't think that's necessarily a deal breaker for myself. And not to harp on our sitting OC too much, but that seems to be a pretty obvious problem there. So if you're going to hire a new guy, he should get the leeway to bring in his own staff. At this point, I just want to know who the next coach is going to be, whether that's Brent Key, whether that's Willie Fritz, whether that's you, dear listener. I would like the ride to stop spinning. It's getting to the point of, and this is my take on recruiting, love that, they're getting recruited to come to Georgia Tech, but it seems like it's also fluid until you see them out there with a GT on their helmet. This is that for me, but with a GT logo on the chest. I'll get behind whoever it is. Like that's just who I am, right? That's who we are. That's what a fan base should do. But just tell me why somebody's the right fit, and I'm ready for it to be known who that is.
Mr. Purdy, what you got for me on Willie Fritz?
I'll take it. I think I was in the boat of please go get Chadwell and do it as soon as humanly possible boat, as well. In a lot of ways, there's similarities between the two guys that we've seen. So it's not, we're not getting an exact copy of it, but we're getting something, regardless of the fact. So, I think there's something about people did bring up like that Chadwell Fritz is 62, and it's like, wait, and you kind of old to do a whole long-term thing, which I would say we'll cross that bridge when we get there, if this ends up being the case as well. So I'm not worried about that. And then, beyond that, I didn't really watch Tulane. I think the point about that they had like the hurricane last year is kind of critical to note why their record was so bad. That's the kind of season you just throw away immediately and just don't even worry about it. I wouldn't even count that against his record. But then in the context of they had that and they did really well this year, I think that's a promising sign. And it covers those steps we need. We need someone who's built programs, has gone up to another level, built a program, gone up to another level, built a program. So, and that's where we are now. Even though the Brent Key part has been functional, there's still, we cleaned up some periphery items, but that's still a lot of Collins stuff left in the building. Just like what he built, it's still there. It's not fully gone yet. Just by changing one guy's job didn't change the reality of what was inside that building and who was there. And there are still a lot of things that need to get cleaned up and reset. And getting someone new that's not Brent Key, I think, is the way this has to go in order to do that to the fullest extent and well. That said, if Key can do it, cool. And that might be cheaper too, for all we know. If it's cheaper and that helps us with the debt problem, that's also great. So it's still, the carousel is still very much in action. So all this is hypothetical still. I cannot wait. I can't wait for something to be set in stone.
I think I want to get one word in on Key. He seems like a guy who raises the floor, but I just have no idea what that ceiling would be.
Right. That's the problem here. Yeah. We need to know what a ceiling. We need to know that whoever we get has a high enough floor to make it happen, and also having a theoretical pretty high ceiling. And we don't know what the theoretical high ceiling of Key is. Yeah,
and I think the thing like Key makes me feel I have 2 degrees from Georgia Tech. I resonate with I can feel that he likes this place in a way that strikes me as genuine. He wouldn't be back for a 4th time if he didn't. He could be anywhere. He was at Alabama coaching OL. That that is a door that will, or a key that will open any door. And he's here, and I can tell that he loves the place a lot. I just don't know how much it translates to the actual playing of the football, the scheming, and then the offensive line just being inconsistent the last few years. So at this point, like I said, if it's Key, then like I know he's going to put his full heart into it. I can see that, and you know. That's a good thing. That's a great thing for the program, is consistency and care and all that great stuff. Yeah. At this point, I just don't know who it's going to be, and I'm tired. And in February, when they introduce whoever it is at a basketball game, I'll stand up and clap, and that'll be great. And in September, at the first home game, I'll be there in my seat and yelling. But it's hard to prognosticate when it seems like no one really knows much of anything. And as soon as somebody does, everything gets flipped on its head. And maybe that means I need to log off from Twitter for like a week.
There's too much posting, like capital P posting. I think I said this same thing literally last week, but like the internet is just such a mistake.
One of the most beautiful thing about sports, and I hate being told this as a sports fan, is like one of the most beautiful things is it's kind of an emotional thing, right? It's something you have a connection with. You want to feel the good vibes, right? And you know what? Dang it. Like that, the weird questioning what's going to happen is not the good vibes, but the beating UNC or like Pitt and like crying on the field, that is the good vibes, right? And I think part of us, me, all of us, after that UNC game, just due to the nature of the offseason, it is going to be 9 months until you feel the vibes again. And until then, it's just going to be question mark. We'll see what happens, right?
I think we said this a lot in the run-up to that 2019 season too, right? Everything is sort of a question mark, like you said, until they show up on the field on Labor Day in Mercedes-Benz Stadium to play a conference game versus Louisville. I've spilled too much ink on my thoughts about that series. That's the podcast for another day. But you're right. Like, we won't really know what this team looks like, both, in literal roster construction and staff construction and what have you, right? Especially on the roster construction part. Regardless of who gets hired, they're going to want to bring some guys in via the transfer portal. Maybe we're going to lose some guys. Coaches too. We are most likely going to lose talent to the transfer portal too. Jeff Sims, for example, declared for the transfer portal earlier today. So it's just going to be not a completely different team. I haven't actually looked at who's leaving senior graduation wise. It won't be a completely different team, but it will look different. It will function different. It will sound different. And at the end of the day, I think after the sort of malaise of the last 2.5 years, maybe almost 3 years, that sort of change, regardless of what it looks like, will be a good thing.
Yeah, that we're at that point. We went so low that it's pretty much just up from here. That
the bar is literally sitting on the top of Earth's mantle.
The Brent Key era. 2 ranked wins will do you good anywhere outside of like Bama, where you play a ranked team every waking hour of your life. But I think if you put Brent Key in another program, it's like, okay, here's your interim. Regardless of who was before, I don't think it would have been as overwhelming a positive response, because it was just so dire here so quickly and for so long. Any thoughts of happiness around this football program were so needed. And I understand, like, we all had those when we beat Pitt, and it was like, wait a second. Okay, we can play the game. We can play it well. And take advantage of other teams' mistakes and not be the one just finding a way to make more mistakes and compound on mistakes. I think the emotion behind Key is completely legitimate, and I think deserved on his part as well. He, in some ways, did save this team from something worse. I don't want to know what it could have been, but there was a path, and we didn't take it.
Yeah, I think something that just kind of keeps rattling around in my head too is like, would we feel the same way about Brent Key if his diploma did not say Georgia Tech?
That is a really good point. And I think that speaks a lot to why I think some of the smoke is there, right? I think some people really like the idea of having an alum be the head coach and guide the program, right? And I think we saw that in we saw that at a certain level in the last, I don't know if you can call it an era of the athletic program too, but
Eileen and Todd, both big tech folks. And honestly, it's one of the things that I reacted to and resonated with when Angel Cabrera was named president. Like, it was like, oh, he's a tech guy. He's got tech kids. Like, he gets it. Oh, Andre Dickens is running for mayor. Oh, he's a tech guy. He's on our board. Wow. Like, for better or for worse, it's something that, like, it's a brainworm. It gets in your head.
Brainworm is
it's in the calculus.
One way of putting it. But I think it's context dependent, right? Being a tech grad and understanding the needs of a massive higher education institution. Blech, English is hard. And how that operates, I think that context applies, but it is less applicable in sort of in your main big money college athletics context. Right, because the game works, the game both on the field and off the field, in football specifically, works such a specific way. The machine, the gears turn in this very almost hedonistic, capitalist, to use very philosophical words, like way, that it takes an entirely different type of person to really succeed at that. That is maybe not the profile that a tech person would fit, if that makes sense.
I'll let that stand.
Thank you for giving me permission to have an opinion. I appreciate it. Mr. Purdy, you get the last word on football and its ongoing saga.
Last word. Let's be patient, even continue to be patient. I mean, we're not, as the fan base, we aren't going to make the massive sway. I mean, there was word that people wanted to go outside Callaway Plaza and protest, which, like, good Lord, people don't.
This is not Knoxville. However, the idea of a coach getting shianoed at any
Georgia
institution at any institution in this day and age, something like that happening again. That was like
only 5 years ago.
That was 5 years ago, like yesterday. Huh. Which think about that.
Hey, alignment. Georgia Tech caring enough to have a giant protest about something that would really ruffle some feathers in national perception of Georgia Tech. But hey, we're passionate people. There may not be the giant state school land grant, everybody and their brother in the entire state is a fan type thing, but we're passionate people. Like, but also don't protest Callaway, but like, also we care a lot. So yeah, I don't know where I'm
condoning this, but I don't expect. I'm condoning this, but I don't want you to do it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
To save you, let's move on. Mr. Grant, tell me about this first volleyball game versus Pitt.
Oh, dear. Well, it started while I was on a train because I was in Chicago. So I didn't watch the first set, but I did watch the other sets. And it is oddly reminiscent, I would say, of maybe not exactly how Louisville played out a couple weeks ago, but the feeling I had at the end was remarkably similar, because it's another opportunity that Georgia Tech had to take a win against a big team. And that's something that I think we see played out pretty accurately in the selection show, which we'll talk about a little bit. In a little bit, I should say. For those that don't know, the first game Akshay is referencing is the Pitt versus Georgia Tech game, much like the first matchup from homecoming weekend that took place in Pitt's basketball gym. So big environment, about 3,500, 3,600, I believe, fans were in the building. So that's really great to see this happening, up and down the conference for supporting volleyball. But in the end, Georgia Tech did fall 3-2. They were dispatched, we'll say, in the first set, 25-21, pretty close. Took 2 straight sets. Fourth set fell 25-22, and then fell in extras in the fifth set, 19-17. Again, all of these are really heartening results. 2, 3, 4. Well, 2's the minimum, but 2 to 4 points is, Jack, dare I say this, Akshay, dare I say this, a coin flip of a set. So, yeah, Georgia Tech came up heads twice and tails 3 times on the weekend. Before we get into stats, any other high-level stuff, Jack, Akshay, you want to mention?
I would generally agree on the coin flip nature of the game. We were very sadly up 10-5 in that fifth set.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had doubled them and just needed 5 points. Like, we just literally needed to score half as many as they would ish to get it done. And just barely didn't. I mean, both teams had both teams, anytime they were down, they found the run when they needed to find the run, basically. And that happened in every set. Tech came back in a set they shouldn't have won. Pitt came back in a set they shouldn't have won. So It went back and forth properly.
Go over the stats real quick before we move on to the last game of the regular season.
Yeah, for sure. Just going around the horn, Tech was on the road. Makes it easy because they're at the top of the box score. I don't know why I struggled with that. Bianca Bertolino quietly had, I think, Jack, Akshay, this was probably her best game of the year. She had 12 kills on 25 attack, only 1 error. That's 440. That's about as good as you're going to see anyone do on any given day. Tamara Otene had 12 kills as well, but that was on 34 attacks with 7 errors, so not too efficient there. Meanwhile, Breland Morissette, really a career day for her. 20 kills on 31 for a 581. Meanwhile, Julia Bergman was, as always, the focal point of the attack. I think it's very interesting seeing these go 5 sets because we see a lot of people with a lot of gaudy numbers, but Breland and Bianca have a day. That was quite a great thing to see. And I think, having people that can take the load off for Julia really translates into, you make that fifth set, which is not something we saw the first time around against a great team in Pitt, and they'll be hosting. So more props to them.
Before we get to that FSU game, I just wanted to point out that I just noticed that Husker Geek has advanced box scores for all of these games, which I am now
those box scores in my recap of this game where we figured out that Bertolino was actually the player of the game and not Breland Morissette, because just from her digging alone in defense, she basically saved us and had a WPA just out the door from everybody else on the floor, surely because of her defense and offensively efficient. But
yeah, see, I need to read our site more often, is what it sounds like. But from a high level team perspective, your differences, so your edge, right? Your edge in the game was probably on service points. Pitt was 5% better, 5 percentage points better than Tech there. Service error percentage, Tech was 3% worse, 3 percentage points worse there. And it also looks like error percentage, Tech was 2 percentage points worse there. But they out hit Pitt on the entire game. There was a 0.268 to 0.257. So a small margin, but notable nonetheless.
I can't remember through what set I remember hearing this, but I did hear it with my own ears, hearing Tech had not committed a service error all night. The commentators noted, and then immediately on I think the 2 plays after that, they committed a service error. Tech wound up with 6 on the evening. That is a little bit tough when Pitt's only committing 3. That's in a match that goes to the 5th set, win by 2, which is something we've seen this team do a lot up in Pittsburgh. They really play them tight up there. That's the difference in the match. Those 3 points, that's pretty crucial. It is worth noting that both Tech and Pitt had pretty similarly consistent side out percentage. That's good to see. Attacks were pretty consistent across the board. Honestly, the 4th set was a bit of a black eye for both teams, both committing 7 errors. So really,
it was a weird set.
Really pretty
I'd say pretty consistent between what we saw between the two teams, but Pitt's really had a knack for pulling games like this out this year and I think it's been a theme of the last 3 months for us, where Georgia Tech hasn't necessarily always done that, but hey, they challenged themselves with the schedule in and out of conference this year. And dare I say, one of my favorite sports memes, they're the best 7-loss team in the country right now. I saw you cringe, Akshay.
I've been doing that a lot. Mr. Purdy, tell me about this game versus Florida State to end the regular season, which you were on at Media Row for.
It was a very easy game. Nothing. There was not much significant that happened in terms of like what we learned about the team at all. The significant part was that Bergman finished her. She's at her final career numbers, which is the big stuff there. She's at 515 in the regular season. She got to 500 at the Pitt game, and now the 15 more puts her at 9th most in program history. 17-0. That's for a single season. She's at 7. The FSU game crossed the 1700 boundary, so she's finishing at 1708 for 6th in Tech history. And did very well. Aaron Moss was by far player of the game, though. Our offense was just running through the middle initially. Julia eventually led the team in kills per usual, but she kind of needed to clean up in the third set when it was getting a little tough. But second set, Tech showed up and just wiped the floor, and I was glad to know that match was going to take less than 90 minutes, as they usually do in O'Keefe.
Yeah. One thing I do want to note, Pittsburgh, we talked about some of the differences of them just being able to put sets and matches away. They had 13 players see the floor in this game. I feel like that's worth noting before we get too far. Just a really deep program, and a lot of these great programs are super deep. Like that's pretty defining.
That's a good point. I'll expound on that. Most of the teams we played dove into the bench a lot. Every team we played that was good had a bench that they would dip into at any point they felt like they needed to. And this was the case last year with Tech, where there wasn't much of bench dipping at all, especially near the end. It was more up front. In the Pitt game, the idea was to put I'm forgetting the names already. Leah Hart, I think it was Nicole Drunick would come in. And Laura Fisher, who had height, and so the idea was to get the blocks down and just have better, just literally space get more coverage on the floor, and that semi worked. It's never been a flawless plan. The idea of putting Elizabeth Patterson in to spot serve has kind of faded away as well, which is where we had that Kayla Kaiser role last year. So the spot stuff just hasn't worked as well. I mean, we lose points on that, and when we had as tough at the end of its schedule, it's just like we had to win. And so you throw the best people out there and make it happen. Leah Harper came in just in the first set against FSU, and she was the only bench player to even show up. I mean, she's on the box score. I don't know if she actually played a point. So even against FSU at the end, where we still want to win, but yeah, this team Collier has shown that the rotations are going to come often, and when they do, it'll be very minimal.
Yeah, agreed. And that's really been a pretty typical Collier, a Collier calling card. Really, it's funny how much.
Don't do the alliteration.
I feel so like I should have this more diverse points here, but women's basketball, volleyball, and men's basketball have all been traditionally teams that play pretty short benches. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit different this year for the basketball teams, but it's, I think that's something that makes a difference between a program that's maybe the elite of the elite and the ones that are just very consistent and pretty good. Because among those three teams, women's basketball has made the tournament 2 years in a row, pending the results this year. Men's basketball has made it once, and then volleyball's three seasons in a row as well. So it's not like they're bad teams. It's just, man, would be nice to have a little bit more depth, I think.
It's tiers, right? Like they are on the precipice of hitting that next tier, but getting there, finding that next gear to get to that tier, lots of rhymes here, requires depth, both generated both from recruiting and now with also the transfer portal as well.
They're so close.
Akshay, I need you to do not do this podcast in Limerick. Otherwise, I'll be very disappointed.
Absolutely not.
That being said, I feel like, we've been doing this podcast, Akshay and myself, quite some time now. And there was a time where
pulling off hey, we can be that, third, fourth, fifth best team in the ACC, perfectly satisfying, especially considering where we were. And, that's a good place to be, but it would be nice to maybe turn the corner someday, but who knows?
I would like to be tied for second next year.
Hey, that's a good goal. That's a good goal.
I think this kind of flows into our discussion about what's next for Tech in terms of the tournament. We'll get to that in a second. But I think just summing up the season in general, they played a very tough schedule. But I find the result, that 20-7 mark, this 5 seed in the Texas side of the bracket, or Texas quadrant of the bracket, very frustrating. Because, and we were talking about this before we started recording, the lack of a hosting rights here feels like a problem or a result of Tech's own doing, because they had the games on the schedule, especially late on. They had their games on the schedule and the performances late on to do it, and they just could not finish versus Louisville and could not finish versus Pitt.
When you're prognosticating the schedule, I would have to go back to see exactly what we said. But just thinking about the teams that were on the schedule, right? BYU, Ohio State, Louisville twice, Pitt twice. Trying to think if there's any others that jumped out at me, kind of like those 6. But among those 6, you cannot reasonably expect to win all of them. I don't even think it's all that reasonable to win half of them, quite honestly. I figured we were going to be exiting the season with somewhere between 5 and 7 losses. So in terms of expectations, this is pretty on the nose, right? Like, we didn't look outmatched in any of those games. And Jack's kind of been great at least keeping me honest about this, of just like, hey, a lot of these things are like coin flip things. A point or two go a different way. And, that the 5-setter turns out different for Pitt, or turns out different for Louisville.
Were outright disappointing were the Miami match and the Arkansas match.
Yep. The Arkansas match came out of nowhere, I think.
Yeah. Arkansas showed no one knew they were good. So, I mean, I don't necessarily blame the team for maybe being a little overwhelmed in that department. But still, like, you play to win. Like, you prepare as well as you can. I asked Kalia, like, are there trap games in this ACC schedule? And she's like, we can't assume any of this. Like, we have to play like we need to win every single one of them. And they clearly did.
They're all trap games.
I gotta live react this. I just did a thread of the volleyball selection show, talking about, our assignment, and that was quick. And I'm going to put this take out there because I don't think I've said it yet. This volleyball being in the Texas quarter and potentially playing them in the third round, if we make it that far, is exactly like what baseball got in being sent to Tennessee. So if you are not familiar with with volleyball, react similarly to how you felt when baseball got sent to Tennessee for that regional, or to Nashville the year before, because it's very, very similar vibes, at least in my head. Anyways, I put this whole long thread together, and somebody replied at the end, "What?"
What you couldn't hear in the background there, as I was muted, was just me groaning loudly at the thought of a third Georgia Tech team in the last 2-3 years that flows into the path of the 1 seed, or I guess in the case of that year in Vanderbilt, the 2 seed. Just that is frustrating. Actually, it's like the 4th Georgia Tech team, because volleyball did this last year too. Anyway,
I mean, that's fair, but I think that felt a little bit different because we got to host.
We got far enough to where it was deserved. Like, it wasn't. Yeah. We didn't get screwed around on that one.
Yeah, that was the Elite 8. Like, at that point, you're gonna face one of the top 8 teams. Like, dang, you mean we didn't get Mercer in the Elite 8? Dang, no offense, Mercer. Yeah, no. I again, the volleyball season was not. It's not bad. They're still they're playing for a championship starting like Friday. Like, this is an exciting time of year. It shouldn't be, something that we want you all to not feel excited about it, because you know what? Georgia Tech matches up against Wright State, against Marquette. Texas is scary, but with how Tech has played Louisville, who for the context on the rest of the ACC, there are 4 other teams that made it. Florida State and Miami will be playing in the tournament. Pitt and Louisville will be hosting. All of this is pretty expected. It's really just that Tech will they or won't they host in the opening 2 rounds being the big difference there. But that being said, this is a Georgia Tech team that has taken a phenomenal Louisville team to 5 sets, a phenomenal Pitt team to 5 sets, and both of those teams to 4 sets in the other games they played. They beat BYU, which is a really quality program. So at the end of the day, they can throw it down with anyone. And quite frankly, they have not been lucky in these big games this year, and they're kind of due. So I'm not saying, they're automatically going to win, but they can play with them, and you never really know. That's why they play the games, right? That's why they play the games.
No, all of these games are played on spreadsheets. I don't know what you're talking about. Moving on, you gave me a nice little segue to talk about the actual. What?
I mean, the games aren't played on paper?
Boo!
Got him!
I got him! I've been sitting on that forever. There we go. GameOnPaper.com for all your football scores. There you go.
Disgusting. Let's talk about the actual regional slate for Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech will play Wright State in the Marquette Regional on Thursday at 5 p.m. I assume that's Eastern, Jack.
Yes.
And that the winner of that will play the winner of Marquette and Ball State on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So let's start at the bottom and talk about these opponents. We'll use our friend and colleague Husker Geeks rankings to talk about these teams. Ball State finished as the MAC tournament runner-up. They were given an at-large bid. They are ranked 63rd in Husker Geeks Viper rankings. Wright State is 60th. They won the Horizon. Georgia Tech, obviously, we know, 3rd place in the ACC, 13th in the Viper rankings, and Marquette, as the 4 seed and the host, finished 18th in the Viper regular season rankings. Let's start with talking about our opponent, Wright State. Wright State, their strength of record was 36th in the nation. They finished Atlanta's favorites record, 28-3. They did not play a quadrant 1 team at all this year. They were 10-3 versus quadrant 2, 14-0 versus quadrant 3, and 4-0 versus quadrant 4. So just to get an idea of what that schedule will look like. Per a Husker Geek does these 2 tests called the expanded and the core test. I haven't looked exactly into the methodology, so I can't comment specifically on what they mean. But Wright State, at least per these metrics that I'm looking at on my monitor right now, they were probably, if they had not won the Horizon, at least based on what Husker Geek is saying, they are probably not in this tournament.
I will say they are 51st in the country in adjusted RPI, which for a auto bid mid-major champion type dealio, not the worst auto bid that you can get.
Criteria for the committee. So,
yeah. In terms of something that just jumped right out at me on just their nitty gritty, they played a game against Drake. Drake being a Missouri Valley school that 5,000 people were at, which is kind of bonkers. Drake versus Wright State volleyball drawing 5,000 people, but more power to them, I guess. In terms of other names per se that jump out, they lost a 5-setter to Iowa. They did play Dayton twice, 2 wins. Iowa State, again, another Power 5 opponent. That was a 4-set loss, but in the Horizon League schedule, they really ran this league into a wood chipper. I'm pretty sure they were undefeated. Yeah, they were undefeated in conference play, including the postseason tournament.
I think this is a good matchup in the first round.
This should be a cruising 3-0 win. I'm very much not afraid to say that, even in single elimination territory.
Well, if we see a non-Marquette team in the second, I would lump that into the same category there.
That would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, Ball State would be that team, and just to cover them a little bit, and then we'll hit Marquette later. Like I said, 63rd in Viper resume ranking wise, 63rd as well. They didn't pass either the test that Husker Geek has available. Their strength of record is 61st. They finished the season 24-8, winless against Quadrant 1, 15-6 versus Quadrant 2, undefeated versus quadrants 3 and 4. So a bit of a mixed bag at the bottom part of this bracket, but I think Marquette is really the top line story, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and they're number 14 in the RPI, so somebody's numbers likes them. At least they did beat Kentucky, another hosting team, in 5 sets on the road. Yikes. They lost at Wisconsin in front of 7,000 people. So, probably understandable. Beat Loyola. That's a tournament team. Win over LSU, Illinois. Trying to see if anything else jumps out at me. So Illinois would be a common opponent there. And then, Big East schedule after that. So not anything too shabby. They did lose to Creighton in the Big East championship. I believe Creighton is hosting. I think they're a 4 seed. Don't quote me on any of that, but that's off the top of my head.
Just to go over Marquette's rankings here as well. 20th in Viper. That's different from what the rankings page says. That's weird. 20th in Viper, 20th in resume ranking as well. 18th strength of record. They are 27-3, 4-3 versus Quadrant 1, and undefeated versus the other quadrants. So very, very good volleyball team here. The Husker Geek expanded test has them listed as a regional contender. That's where they are. They also have one third-team All-American per the Viper rankings in Yadira Chante, who leads the team with 24.4 win probability added in 101 sets played. So a lot of attacking power there. Anything else to talk about on the tournament field before we move on?
Of note, Marquette in the last coaches ranking was the spot right behind us at 14th. We really just it was in a sense another coin flip in terms of who was hosting this as well. We were right on the brink. These are us and Marquette are probably going to match up pretty well. This probably can go 4 or 5 sets. And they're defensively good and they're offensively good. So the two things, we're good at everything too. So it might be a nice little brawl there. And then if we get out of it, we got Texas to look forward to, which will be that tier we have not reached and that we have not been able to beat either. So,
Jack, speaking of Texas, can you tell us a little bit more about what the draw looks like outside of the Marquette regional?
So we're in if you go to the NCAA bracket on the NCAA's website, we're in that top left bracket that Texas is on the top of. They're playing Fairleigh Dickinson, and they will play the winner of Towson or Georgia on Friday. And so there is a world where there is clean old-fashioned hate round 2 in Austin, Texas next weekend. Not this coming weekend, but next weekend if things go remarkably fortunately, which would definitely set up an easier path to success for us and line us up to play Ohio State again in the Elite Eight, possibly if they get over Minnesota.
The clean old-fashioned hate redux is probably a best possible scenario.
It really is. It really is. Towson, they won a lot of games, and so they'll probably beat Georgia. Georgia did not seem like a competitive team when we played them earlier this year when I watched. But Texas is they're ridiculously good. Like, they are beyond good. Like, if they don't make the final, that's an upset at this point.
Texas did lose to Nebraska in their own home gym last year, and Nebraska ended up going to the championship game. So that is something to, I guess, keep an eye on.
No, they didn't. Wisconsin.
No, Wisconsin won.
That's right.
But it was an amazing championship game. So looking forward to a really competitive tournament, even outside of our bracket, right? Like, a lot of these games, I mean, all of these will be on the ESPN family of networks. It's a very fun sport to watch. Like, this is especially the time to watch it too.
Yeah, Thursday. There's going to be a lot of matches Thursday afternoon. The top seeds don't play until later that evening. Pretty much universally across the whole tournament, as I'm looking at the times. But no, if you can get some time with this tournament, it'll be worth your while, because this is the 64. This is pretty close to the 64 best teams. A lot of these players are on these top teams are just remarkable athletes.
Did we get a reading on whether there will be a whip around show for this, like there is for the baseball regional weekend?
I do not know. That can be a later thing. We add in some write up that I do.
That would be delightful if they did, but we'll see.
There are games running from 4 o'clock till midnight plus on Thursday, so they certainly would have the games to do it with if they so chose. The first game that starts is Purdue and Tennessee that's on Friday. Sorry, on Thursday there's 4:30 games. I want to say, yes, Western Kentucky Bowling Green. There you go. So
I think there will be. I'm not entirely sure though. I've ended up on volleyballmag.com to find this out, but I guess we'll find out this weekend, and we'll find out more about Georgia Tech sports, including women's and men's basketball, right after this short break.
Yes. As always, our short break is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103 is Georgia Tech's leading place to find the ATL logo and a ton of other really high quality products, including a lot of stuff in gold and now some long sleeve stuff in white. The new Ramblin' Wreck script looks great through tomorrow. You can get 20% off all of your orders. And there's also not just gold Felice Bobby Dodd, but navy Felice Bobby Dodd as well. So if you missed out on that last year, go ahead and give them a look over there. They make great stuff and are great representatives of all the great stuff that we got going on here at Georgia Tech and in the Georgia Tech family. We love Section 103, and we hope you do too. As always, free shipping on orders over $70.
All right, welcome back to Scions of the Southland. Women's basketball was at one of those interesting little early season tournaments this past week. Mr. Purdy, do you want to walk us through their performance?
I will do as best I can, considering no one on earth probably watched these games that weren't already in the building, because it was on some paid subscription thing called Flow Hoops, and so I did not have access to any video whatsoever. What I do know, though, is that Tony Morgan scored 17 in our loss to USF to start the Gulf Coast Showcase. We lost 63-50. USF killed us at the free throw line, which is usually the great way to beat Georgia Tech in any basketball-related sport. And then we played Air Force the next day. We won that game 65-59. Tony again had a good game. Her and Bianca Jackson combined for 26. And then Maria Hermosa got to 9 points, which is good. Caleb Blackshear got to 8. And actually won the rebounding battle, believe it or not. Which is just the massive pain point these last couple of games. And also outscored the Air Force in the paint. So my guess, and is that Air Force just was undersized, remarkably undersized compared to us, or just didn't have rebounding, or we fixed our rebounding. We weren't able to watch these games, so I'm taking this off of the press releases and the basic stats here, because there was no video. But the real promising thing is that today, during all of our various footballs, American and international, and what was today? Sunday, in the NFL, Tech did beat Belmont 58-52, which is huge. Bianca Jackson scored 24 points, and we play them next week in Belmont, or at Belmont. So the fact we won this game is massive, because that shows they learned something this weekend, or Belmont got bad. I don't know.
Belmont's a good school. Belmont's a good program.
Belmont worked women's basketball last year. I remember sitting in the arena for that game, and that was not a particularly comfortable, wire to wire win.
I feel like it's just weird to play them twice in a week. Like, maybe it's because of just how they originally had it listed on the schedule. I thought we were only playing 2 games at the Gulf Coast Showcase, honestly. So I was a little bit surprised.
Third game and all these things. So
a little bit surprised, but
de facto third placer.
Also,
not really a hot take, but just an observation. The Hertz Arena seems like a much nicer venue than some of these men's and especially women's tournaments we've seen around the country this weekend. There are some real places that just do not look fit to host some of these events. So I hope they had a nice time down in Estero. Odd that we're playing Belmont twice in a week, but other than that, like, I don't know, would have been nice to have it on a mainline TV network, but 2-1 ain't so bad.
Yeah, no, 2-1 I think is great. Much better considering just how flat we looked in the last game at home, and in Auburn as well. I will note against Belmont, Hermosa only played 6 minutes and 48 seconds. The press release didn't say if she's hurt or whatever, but so that's something to look out for. She didn't attempt a shot, only had a rebound. She was a -11 in those 6 minutes, though, so something clearly needed to change in that. Tech only shot 30% the entire game and still won. Belmont then also shot 31%. It was pretty much the Bianca Jackson and Cam Swartz show. They combined made 12 of 13 free throws, believe it or not. So the things we needed to clean up on, we did. And then rebounding-wise, we rebounded them by 6. So figuring it out, Kara Dunn played a lot of minutes. Aisha Wona-Arenat played a lot of minutes. Oh, I'm seeing here. She played 27 minutes. And she adds to our height and might be a little bit more physical than Nerea, so that might be why Nerea didn't play as much. I don't know. So that's what's there. Belmont played their whole team. It looks like they had Madison Bartley scored 22, so that'll be something to look out for next game. Yep. Yeah, Aisha Wona-Arenat was our best plus-minus at plus 13 on the team. So she was cleaning up on the boards, apparently. That might be the change that's happened, which could be something that happened because at the last press conference that Coach Fortner had with us, Rod McKenzie asked about, are the rotations set at all? Like, where are you on this? And she's like, yeah, nothing's set yet. So having back-to-back-to-back games was an incredible I can definitely say was an incredible learning experience for them to figure out what their best identity is, because they got immediate feedback in a very short amount of time, which they really, really needed. And that probably saved them some future headaches, especially as we go to Michigan State this week for the Big Ten ACC Challenge.
Yeah. And that'll be a game that'll teach us stuff too. So should make for an interesting week. I do not know for the life of me why I just closed ramblinrec.com, because I did want to say the channel that is on, because that is important for those who are missing out.
Big Ten Network.
Yeah. So
hey, at least you can get that one. At least you can get that one, and it's not like freaking Pac-12 California or whatever.
Yeah.
Slow hoops TM.
So Thursday night will be a lovely double feature between simultaneous volleyball and women's basketball.
Yep. Of note, for people who are around, I believe the next home game is not for some time because of that. Yeah. I will pull that up just because I know people are probably itching to get December back in the mix
11.
There.
Sunday, December 11 versus Central Michigan Chippewas. Second of the home and home.
I was going to say, we're repaying that delightful visit to.
That delightful, your microphone cut out, but that delightful 60-30 whatever killing we did up there. So, yeah, that is where we're at. Anything else, Akshay, while Jake's microphone continues to not work?
I don't have anything on this. I will say, just to clarify the difference in the dates for the next home game, because Thursday's game is on the 1st of December. You account for finals week, which is next week on campus. So, that's why you're not playing again for 10 days. But they have 10 days between a fixture versus Michigan State and a fixture versus Central Michigan
the Belmont game's between that.
Yeah, Belmont's in there too.
They have X number of days in between Belmont and the Central Michigan game to do the academics part. And maybe the coaches also evaluate some of the data that they saw from Estero and also from Michigan State. And they make some tweaks heading into, or as we start heading towards ACC season. Jake, you get the final word before we head over to men's basketball.
Yeah, one more note is that the game after the Central Michigan game is at Boston College. That'll also be on a Sunday. So Central Michigan being the stay somewhat in tune during a long finals break, that's probably the right way to to do that with the home game during busy time on campus. So little light on women's basketball after this week, but they'll be in full force after that BC game really for about 3 months straight. So there's a lot coming down the pipe.
Let's pivot over to men's basketball. I don't know which one of you wrote this, but you had very strong feelings. And so I think that this reads like Jake. So I want to kick it over to him to see exactly, let's have a therapy session here.
Oh, this was me. I was watching this game on a train, as that's probably been the theme. I think I said that about volleyball too. But let's just say that the Utah loss in particular was very emblematic of not just what we've seen from this team so far, but a lot of the last, we'll call it era of Georgia Tech basketball. It seems totally preventable, given that Georgia Tech went, I believe, the first 7 minutes or 6 minutes without scoring a field goal, and the last 6 or 7 as well. So instead of the traditional third quarter nap, they just didn't play the ending and beginning, I guess, total third of the game. In the period where Georgia Tech was scoring, they did outscore Utah by about 24, 25 points. I forget the exact math. I just see red when I think about this. It feels preventable. That's not a lot of analysis. That's a lot of emotions. So if one of you guys wants to say something smarter than that, go right ahead. And then the Marquette game was just a classic, boat race type situation.
I have no thoughts on this other than the Utah game was entirely winnable if Tech could make free throws, which again,
anything, if they could make
serious
anything.
Problem.
Yeah, it's not amazing. I watched most of this Utah game. The other 2 games I didn't watch. But I guess a big thing here. Who am I thinking of? The guy Rodney Howard's backup.
Javon Franklin.
Javon Franklin. Yeah, I mean I think that's the biggest takeaway is like, okay, no, he's kind of a guy here, and then he started the Marquette game, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, at least that's cool that we've found a feasible other big man in the loop that we can use, which is nice.
Well, in that Marquette game, he went 6 for 9 from the floor and 5 of 6 from the line, 14 total rebounds, drew 4 fouls, which is more than the 3 he committed, 2 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks. That's pretty darn good. Granted, his plus minus was pretty low, but he also played 35 minutes in a game Tech lost by 24.
Got outmatched. So I mean, the plus minus I don't think is not a stat that's going to teach you much in that game.
No.
Bench points wasn't great in that game. Only 15 bench points. So really having to count on the starters to carry us on the second the second of 3 games in a row, or is that second of 3 games in a row? Because we played Wednesday. Oh, we had a few days before the North Alabama game. Sorry, it was not like the women's situation. So, I mean, it's just. I mean, I do want to acknowledge also that like people are not. People are wondering where Pastner's how much lifeline he's got left as well. Losses like that Utah loss aren't good in terms of holding that up. Of course, the money situation's a whole another factor. I don't want to go into that right now. But this next stretch of games is going to be crucial just to be like the Iowa Northeastern to be like, all right, what do we got? And Georgia as well before we get into ACC play of like, okay, do we have something to work off of this year, or is it just going to be a lot of last year again, where it's just like, all right, you're showing up more for the fun of it and less because of the result.
Yeah,
I don't want to do well. Before you go, I don't want to do what we did for our softball preview last year, where we had a couple of questions, actually a bunch of questions about Eileen Morales' job. I'm going to put it at, we had a bunch of questions about Eileen Morales' job status heading into that year, and then she completely dunked on us from the free throw line, to use a basketball pun. I don't want to have that discourse, but I also think it would be pretty safe to have it in this case, if you get my meaning.
Akshay, you are Mr. Negging Works, and it worked on softball. So I love Pastner. I think he's a great soundbite guy. I think he's got great energy. As a person, I love him. It's great. It's delightful. I think we learned a lot this week. One, score points. It's important. But also, if it takes a clunker loss or two to realize, this is where we're at. This is what we need. Hey, Javon Franklin seems like a pretty good answer up the middle, even though, he doesn't come in listed as a traditional center in any of the box scores or things like that. He lists as a forward. When he starts, kind of emblematic of Tech having a smaller lineup, but that's something I think we knew coming into the year. Again, this is still a young and a learning team. Davon Smith looks much improved. There's a lot to work with, I think, is what I want to get at here. The team's been somewhat unlucky, maybe a little bit better shot selection, but hearing how Passner's talking in the post-game interviews, it seems like it's, he's noticing these things too. And clearly he's, reacting enough to make the change, particularly with Franklin. I think tying this into the North Alabama game is also important, given that they started Franklin again, Davon Smith, Miles Kelly got a start, Debo Coleman, and Jalen Moore. Honestly, that's kind of the lineup that I've been hoping for.
Those are the guys this year. That's just it.
Yeah, and Jalen Moore's a guy that, for all we've heard from Passner, from the team, from just how he's come up over the last year since he's joined the program, like that's a guy you want to see on the floor more. And the fact that, granted it's North Alabama, but like, hey, Louisville and Florida State, Syracuse, they're not looking like world beaters. There's wins out there in the ACC. Obviously that hurts the RPI a little bit, but we don't have to get too far in the weeds there until the time comes. But all that to say, Moore, Coleman, Kelly, those were the three guys that, not that they were pitched to be a 1-for-1 DeVoe Alvarado right per se, but those are three young guys who came up in the program. We got a transfer big man in terms of Franklin, a la James Banks. Maybe they make something work. And really that postseason band team in 2019, 2020, that was a fun team to watch. And I don't know, I just want them to be a fun team to watch. And, we'll see what happens with that. But I think, at least with the sign that Franklin is starting consistently, we'll see that on Tuesday, what happens in Iowa City. But if we see a pretty similar starting lineup, that Kelly, Smith, Coleman, Moore, Franklin combined for 28, 38, 48, 55, 59 points against North Alabama, hey, I'll take that production every night from our starters.
One note on the Iowa thing. I originally thought this was the women's basketball ACC Big Ten Challenge, and I had a very deep sense of fear that Caitlin Clark was going to run all over this team. But I'm thankful it's the men's basketball side, and that Luka Garza has since graduated to, I guess, the G League. I don't know. I don't really follow college basketball all that well.
Hey, that man was in school for a long, long time. I will tell you that. In terms of their, it's fitting to talk about them now. In terms of their results so far, they are 5-1. That loss was in their most recent game. 3-0 at home, 1-0 on the road, and 1-1 in neutral site games. They played Truman State in exhibition, Bethune-Cookman, North Carolina A&T, Seton Hall, Omaha, Clemson. That was a close game, 74-71. And then their most recent game was against TCU in Niceville, Florida. Don't know what they were doing in Niceville, but that was a 79-66 loss to TCU. And again, they played Clemson close. And those are really the only two big teams they've played. And I feel pretty confident in saying that. They do appear to be ranked number 25, if the number 25 next to their logo on their own website is anywhere near accurate.
Source, literally us, the team that's ranked 25.
Yep. The game will be on either ESPN2 or ESPNU, by the way, just to round that out.
And that is Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So I guess we're not recording this on a Monday for one. So that's approximately 48 hours from now. Gentlemen, Any other notes on either of the basketball teams before we move forward?
Yeah, I got one. The game against Marquette does not make me super pumped to potentially see them again in a different sport later this week. So, you know what?
Vibes. The vibes, they are meh.
The basketball.
But still go to the games. Still go to the games.
Friday night will be against Northeastern at home. Hopefully we're coming off a win. That would be pretty big. But so far, I think we're kind of more or less in line to be right about where we expected. Maybe one or two losses different, but hey, it's a long season, guys. You can't define it off of 2 losses in the first 6 games. So
fair enough. Not a lot to talk about on the ACC tasting menu this week. Just the one game, the ACC Conference Championship in Charlotte, North Carolina. Mr. Grant, I'll go to you first. Let's talk Clemson versus UNC. I don't remember what the line was, and I am going to look it up now while you give a pick.
I think this game's kind of sicko at this point, but up in Charlotte, I think UNC has pretty much shown themselves to be frauds. Sorry, that's just how it is. I don't think Clemson's all that great, but I'm pretty confident that they're better than UNC. As long as that line's within 10 or so points, I'd probably still pick Clemson. I think they'll handle
them. But Jack, before you go, Clemson versus North Carolina. Line is Clemson by 8, over under 61.5. Also learned that Subway now sponsors the ACC Championship, so make of that what you will for an 8 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Mr. Purdy, you are up.
This is almost unwatchable for me, honestly. I don't.
It's unwatchable for normal human beings.
It really is. I'm not going to watch this game, I think. We'll see as what that evening presents. And then
another dinner party, probably.
No, I'll actually be in Wisconsin during this game, so probably not another dinner party. Don't find me in Wisconsin, people. I didn't invite you to Wisconsin with me.
A supper club party.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Hopefully tasting some cheese curds. So, Clemson wins I pretty easily. And no, don't watch this game.
Don't watch the ACC. Let it live in its shame. Speaking of other things that should live in shame, sicko games, sicko picks of the week. Mr. Grant, you are up first.
Yeah, I put UCF Tulane on this simply because I don't know how to feel about this. We did see one of these teams this year. We may be getting up close and personal with the coach of another. Who knows? But I do know that the angry green wave that people have memed back into relevance is fun. So yeah, that's that. There's not a lot to go from here unless you want to pick like some oddball MAC games, and this seemed the most interesting. I'm picking Tulane. They're at home. This means a lot to them. That's a tough place to win. So, yeah, that's my call.
I'm personally offended by you saying, "Oh, unless you pick some oddball MAC game," because I picked Toledo versus Ohio. Mostly because, mostly. Can either of you tell me a single thing about Toledo or Ohio?
Where's the one we got Zach Gibson from? Is that Akron? That might be Akron.
That's Akron.
Did we get Edwin Harrison from Toledo? Maybe, I think we might have gotten Edwin Harrison from Toledo. That makes sense.
You went from current football quarterback to 1960s Institute president in like 4 words.
That's the signs of the Southland difference, tying Maction after dark to leaving the SEC.
Oh God! Wow.
Like,
I don't have anything.
Mr. Purdy, did you pick a game?
I did not, but I'm just gonna note out some weird uniform matchups here. We got the all purple game in TCU Kansas State. Who's what team? You won't be able to tell unless TCU wears the right helmet. North Texas UT San Antonio could be weird in terms of bright green and some orange stuff going on there. Coastal Carolina and Troy. Coastal games are always weird because of their shaded green and blue. And then Purdue Michigan's just going to be a yellow haze.
That's a home game for Purdue.
Yeah, that's true.
Home game, Purdue.
This is our freeway riddled city. Rar. Trains.
Yes, a train goes a roar. Thank you, Mr. Train Expert. I think that about wraps it up for us this week. Anyone else have any final news notes to get to? I'm seeing blank stares, which means it's time to go home. Mr. Grant, take us away.
It feels almost dirty for me to be plugging the Instagram and Facebook, given that is completely Jack's doing. But go ahead and follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. If you're new, we do not usually plug those, but we're bringing them back. Who knows how much longer the Bird app will be around, but you can follow us there too while we're still around. Facebook, you can find us from the Rumble Seat. Instagram, that's at From the Rumble Seat. Twitter, at FTRS Blog. You can find me and Jack as well on Twitter. That's at JGrant98, at Jack Nicholas. I almost called you Jake. It's a great name. I'm sorry. You can also find Section 103 on Twitter. That's at Section 103 and also section103.com. Go check them out. Again, Gold Friday through the end of the 28th. You can email us from the rumbleseat@gmail.com. We appreciate your comments, suggestions, questions. It helps us shape what we do here. And, all those topics and all that do matter, especially in the off season. It's a long off season. You can find us also at the website from therumbleseat.com. This will get posted there with an article where you can comment, as well as comment on all of our other content as well. Go ahead and check it out. They all do wonderful jobs. You can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. We really appreciate it. And tell your friends. Word of mouth is super powerful. With that, who knows where this week will take us? Not us quite yet. Tune in next week for all the results and all of the wheels of Georgia Tech that never stop spinning. Good night. Good luck. Go Jackets.